I'm Ariana Grande.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Erivo.
And you're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Visit vpn.fm to discover more.
There's a cat over here. There's a cat over there. And the wrong one died. And the wrong one died.
Welcome to The Wrong Cat Died, the podcast breakdown the catastrophe. I'm your host, Mike Abrams, and today I have another amazing guest. He recently finished up performing as Bustopher Jones and Gus on the international tour, and I have been told that he's here to defend Bustopher Jones. So welcome, Nathan Taylor, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, you are so welcome. It's great to be here. Thank you.
I loved the start of this conversation for you and I when we met. Is like, I want to come on because I need to defend Bustopher Jones.
Yeah.
And we'll get there, but I have to hear the history first. So I got to hear your cat's history before being in it. Like, when was the first time you saw it? How well did you know it before the tour?
Okay, so I have it's kind of not a checkered history, but an unexpected history with cats. It's always a show that I never expected I would be in. I don't consider myself to be a top-notch dancer by any means. And in fact, when I've been teaching drama students throughout my career, I've said things like, and this is a quote, "It's important to know your strengths in this industry, but it's also important to know your weaknesses. It's not like I'm ever going to be in Cats now, is it?" Turns out I just had to wait to get old and I could play the non-dancing Cats. Although, with that said, it was still really, really physical and hard work. So it took a lot.
You danced the intro, right? Like,
yeah.
You still have to dance.
Michael, Lucy, Grisabella, and obviously Geronimo, not in that order, and I believe we're right in saying that we are the only trio of those three to do as much of the choreography in Jellicle songs as we did. So we're really proud of that. So before that, I had seen Cats at the New London Theatre, now the Jellicle Theatre, of course, in London, and I kind of liked it. It was never one of my favourite shows. I don't think I appreciated it for what it is in a way that I now have come to do, knowing it from the inside the way I do, which is a wholly different experience. And for anyone who's never been in Cats, I really recommend being in Cats. It's great fun, and you'll learn a whole new love for the show that you never thought was there before. So I saw it twice. I went back the second time because I had a friend in it. Who I did a show with later on, and he had this wonderful quote that he was on the tube after the show, and obviously out of makeup, no one knows who any of the cast are, so he was sitting next to these two women who were looking at the brochure, and one of them said to the other, she went, "I didn't get it." And he said, "What didn't you?" And the friend said, "What didn't you get?" And she said, "Well, I didn't really understand what was happening." And her friend just said, "Okay, so there's this cat, and she's really, really sad. So to cheer her up, they sing her a bunch of songs, then they put her in a tire and blast her through the roof." And I think that pretty much sums it up.
That's it. What else do you need to know?
Yeah, exactly.
Did he reply? Did he interject?
The data I have tells me no, but I wish he had. It would have been great to be able to say, "Well, actually, there's a whole lot more on so many different levels if you want to look into it."
I really struggle not to interjecting anymore, because I know too much, and like, I've seen it I've had a few experiences, and actually I really struggled when I went to see you all in Frankfurt, because I'm so used to just chatting with people around me at the show before, and I don't start with like, "Hey, by the way, I know Cats really well." It's more of like, "Hey, why did you choose to come see this tonight?" You know, like how'd you end up here? And just to see kind of if it's a season ticket to whatever regional theater they're at, or if it's like, "Oh, I love Cats." And in Germany, they were all not speaking in English, and I don't speak German. So I could not have a conversation with them to be like, "Hey, so why are you here?" So I just
that's a real shame, because I think you probably would have found somewhere like Frankfurt that the level of English would have been quite high had they learned that you were an English speaker. Yeah. So if you'd spoken to them, maybe it would have come back to you. But I know there's a bit of a barrier.
I'm sure it would have, but I've also just didn't want to be like, "Hey, family next to me, like here's this random guy sitting there in a WTF is a Jellicle cat shirt," or whatever I was wearing. It's always really fun. But I love that that's a very simple. I'm glad that they got that, because I've seen so many other people walk out being like, "I didn't get it," and it's like, what else? What do you need to get?
Yeah,
Did you enjoy the dancing?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And I did quite a lot of press over this tour, and they often ask the same thing, which is what makes Cats universally popular and for so many years. And I think it's just that the universality of the themes within it, which if we want to go deep, we can talk about. But you can get whatever you want from it on whatever level you want. For kids, it's great because it's just bright-coloured, large cats dancing around singing some great songs, and for older people there's a lot more depth there, and there's, if you really get to know the characters and the stories the way people on the inside do, then there's a lot more to tell.
And there's probably one that you relate to, or one that you recognize in a family member, or like it's just so relatable in that sense because of how many there are. And it's so repeatable because you could go back and, the first time I saw it, and even probably the second time I saw it, I didn't know the twins. Right. And now whenever I watch a show and I see the twins kind of react first, is a different experience than if I didn't know that was going to happen. And so you could really go on and every night watch a different character, and you're going to experience an entirely different show.
Yeah, as well as the fact that there's always been so much freedom plugged into the show for us, the performers, to play around within the parameters of the structure of it. So particularly when you're not the focus of the attention, as long as you're not upstaging things, there's plenty of license to play as cats do and to find new stuff. And I was doing that right to the end of like, we were on the road for more than 9 months, and it was great to be able to find fresh joy in it every night. Yeah.
So I want to go back to the rehearsal, or before the rehearsal process, just even the audition process, because I think you had kind of a unique experience. Like, you're obviously going in, it's a show you're not expecting to ever do in your life, like. So what is that? Is this just a moment in time when you're going to everything that pops up, or is this like something you sought out at that moment?
Neither. My agent said they want to see you for Cats, and I had actually auditioned for it the year before when it went out to China, and I think I got a recall, but I didn't get the job, quite clearly, and that was fine. But I knew the musical supervisor, Peter McCarthy. We've known each other for years. He, in fact, conducted my wedding, which sounds like a weird thing, but I got married on the television, and my husband and I wrote our wedding ceremony as a film musical for Channel 4, and we had quite a lot of music in it, and Peter conducted the orchestra we had as part of it. So I've known Peter for a long, long time. And when this time round, when my agent said they want to see you for Cats, I kind of guessed that it was almost like a continuation of that process, because I didn't go in as a first round. They sent me the material straight away, and I just went in once, and that was it. But it was a different experience for most auditions for me, because a very good friend of mine, someone I've known since my school days, was in the end stages of advanced cancer at the time. And I was planning to drive literally from the audition room down to Bath, which is, for people who don't know, is about 2.5 hours drive outside London, and to be with her in hospital overnight and stay with her until she stopped living. And that's exactly what happened. So I went into that audition in a kind of heightened, fragile emotional state, and actually that's kind of really kind of useful for Gus, who is frail and old and delicate and fragile and sensitive and all of those things. And without wanting to sound like I was prostituting my friend's death for the sake of getting a job, I just know that those things were visible in what I showed to the team who were auditioning. Went with my dear friend Alison. Stayed with her. She passed away in the early hours of the next morning, and as I was driving back from the hospital back to my home, my agent called to essentially say that I'd got the job. It was very, very strange. So for me, Cats began with that, and it was a very last minute thing as well. My auditions, they must have been let down at the last minute. I don't know the history of it. I never mind not being the first person's choice for a job, as long as it's my name that goes on the contract. But it was only about 2 weeks before we started rehearsals. So suddenly it was like, you're in Cats, you never thought you were going to be, and you start in 2 weeks and you're going to be leaving home for a year. It was absolutely crazy.
Yeah. How in general, like how much do you draw on personal experience for roles? Like it is, you're playing essentially 3 characters, and you're doing 3 very different character personalities and types that are all, you got to adjust in between your moments. But there is a level of the personality that you got to get into, but also they're cats. Like like you're not drawing on cat experience. So like, do you bring a lot of that into your storytelling?
Oh, that's really interesting, and particularly with this one, Gus for me is me. The older I get, I'm probably quite young by standards of a lot of people who've played the role. I'm 51 now. I was 50 when I got the job, and I just feel so connected to his story. I've said things like the theatre is certainly not what it was. I've talked about these young kids coming up and not having the same sort of work ethics that we used to have back in the day. And I hear all of that coming out of my mouth sometimes. I go, wow, you really are Gus. And I think what that means is actually that T.S. Eliot drew a very, very relatable character in the poems. And I think that's more what that's to do with. So I feel I relate a lot to Gus. You're right, Bustopher is someone completely different. And I think I found Bustopher harder to find in rehearsals and in performance, actually, because he's very, very different from who I am as a human. I'm not upper crust, and I didn't dine on all those fine foods and wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth the way Bustopher clearly was. So I found that a little bit trickier to find, but I loved being able to make that switch halfway through the show into something completely different. That was a real fun challenge.
All right, it's time for the Bustopher defense.
Let's
hear it.
Okay, so when I first learned about your podcast, I thought, okay, let me go back and listen to some of the early episodes, and obviously. Back in the early days, you were doing sort of character essays for each of the cats in turn.
Yeah.
But sort of kind of before you got really busy with the guests, I think it was. And
this was the only part of the show to start. I agreed to do 10 episodes, and the whole premise was I was going to explain the characters for people who are going to go see the 2019 movie as someone who does not know the show.
Right.
But firmly disagrees with the ending. That was the idea. And if you listen to it, I was basically only using a couple pieces of source material.
Yeah.
I have the fan Wikipedia page, which has some canon on there at that point. And I was using the 1998 movie, only clips from YouTube. And I couldn't have told you the character names when I started.
Right.
So if you listen to it, I actually am always terrified to re-listen to those episodes. And if you listen to the intro I re-recorded the intro episode because when this started picking up more steam, I was like, if you start with just those first 10, you're going to think I'm crazy because I don't like by the time I recorded number 7, I did not know who number 7 was when I was recording numbers 2 and 3.
Right.
So if you listen to it as like, I kind of joke as I go back now, I know so much now. And at that point, like I did not know how these things tied together because I was doing them one by one each week as I went.
Well, that's all very well, Mike Abrams. You know that you.
So and I went off on Bustopher. I went off on Bustopher because I read Gentleman's Club, and that has a very different meaning in the United States than it does in London.
So thank you, because that I wasn't sure whether you knew that at the time. Clearly, you do. I did that now,
but it was more fun to go the other route.
Well, I wanted to make sure that I clear Bustopher's good name today. For those people who don't know, particularly if you're North American listeners, a gentleman's club in the UK, certainly in the time of Queen Victoria and T.S. Eliot, was not a strip joint. It absolutely was not. It was a place for distinguished upper class gentlemen to go away from the hustle and bustle of noise and probably the chatter and noise from their wives and loved ones, where they could read their newspapers, drink port, eat fabulous fine food, get gout, hide themselves in clouds of cigar smoke deep in the wings of a Chesterfield armchair. And that was what they were doing, and I've grown very fond of Bustopher. And when I was listening to your woeful character assassination of this poor gentleman cat who quite possibly could be homosexual himself. There's nothing to suggest that.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, he plays and sort of flirts a bit with Gumby Cat, but maybe that's just a front. Who knows? So very much the Gentleman's Club, women just weren't allowed at all, let alone allowed to get clothless. So I just wanted to put that out there, and to anybody who thinks that Bustopher's a bit of an old pervert, he's a gentle old soul. He may be a little bit out of touch with the modern world, but I don't see any harm in him for that.
Well, I will say a couple things in response to that. One is I do think Bustopher Jones is cut from the Royal Caribbean Cruise one.
Yes.
So when they decided that they needed to end up in 90 minutes, Bustopher Jones was the one cat that they were like, we're good with getting rid of this cat.
He's easy because he's not in the rest of the show. He doesn't appear as an ensemble cat. He doesn't come back at the end. So he's literally splice and remove.
The Jellicle Ball Bustopher Jones has a much more pronounced storyline and has a lot of like when there was a lot of like the Bustopher Jones hate that I kind of like joked about. You can't bring that to the Jellicle Ball version for sure.
Right.
We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died.
But what I will say is, I don't know if I've ever told this story on this podcast, but I do have a little bit of a fun moment from that happening, because when I was recording those first 10, I did them in a studio that we had at the time for our network. And I was sitting there with my podcast producer, recording them with him doing all the audio and me just reading the nonsense I wrote for every character, the night or two before. And that studio is being used by all the other incredible shows in the Broadway podcast network. And I was never told what was before or after me when I was recording. And so every once in a while I'd be finishing up and some incredible performer would come in. And other times, like this time, they would walk in mid me rambling on my stuff. So in the middle of talking about Bustopher Jones being at a gentleman's club with Taylor Swift, I believe is how I framed it.
Yes.
In walks Alex Brightman, who at the time was doing, I think, Beetlejuice, maybe, but brilliant performer. And I never met him, and I didn't know him at all. And I just kind of looked over, and I saw him walk in, and I was like, this guy's gonna think I'm crazy. Like if you don't know, because at that point I was very new. The podcast was, was picking up steam, but didn't have the followers it has now.
Right.
And I was looking at my producer going like, we're gonna have to explain to him what in the world this show is. like this sounds nuts if you don't know. And so he was very thankful. He's a very funny guy and thought the whole thing was hilarious and sat down and was just enjoying every minute of it. But yeah, I came for some hate, and I got some hate for Skimbleshanks. That was the other one that was I called him the creepy uncle, and everyone's like, no, he's the fun uncle. So that was the other one where I'm like, all right, my mind has shifted on a few of these characters as I've learned more. I know a lot more about them.
Do you know what? We all deserve the grace to be able to grow and evolve.
Yeah. Well, the super fans, they all have their opinions.
Yeah.
And what I love about this show most is that there's not a right answer to almost everything. There's no universal truth on most of this. And so it's really fun when I meet a super fan, because I just love asking, like, what do you disagree with that I think? Like, what have I gotten wrong? What do you... Because I'll never forget, I made a meme that made fun of, not made fun of, but just alluded to Bomb Ballerina and Demeter. It was kind of a sexual meme.
Right.
And someone was like, they're sisters. And I was like, are they sisters? And someone was like, no, they're best friends. And someone was like, no, they're lovers. And I did a poll, and I didn't get there was no clear answer. And I'm like, I have performers answering the poll who have played the roles, giving me different answers.
Oh, there will be people within the same company who believe different things about those characters, who have literally heard the story from the same director and developed the same show and are performing it every night, who believe different things. And I think there's room for all of that. which I would have had no idea about when I first watched the show at all.
Totally.
Like you, I didn't really understand it so much, didn't get it. I have developed a huge appreciation for all of that madness aspect of it. That's the stuff that means, because it's a show unlike any other that has ever existed. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
I think it broke all the rules of what made a successful hit Broadway or West End musical at the time. You know, that gentle start without really hitting a big opening number until you get sort of 5 minutes into it. The end of Act 1 just dribbling away into nothing with no great, but you'd imagine the ball would be the end of Act 1. No, we're going to do something different. We're going to take it right down and just sort of let Act 1 dribble out the door without anyone really knowing when it's finished or not. And then playtime into Act 2 with the house lights up. It was kind of daring and crazy, and I think that aspect of it has infused all of it and allowed, because there is no dialogue, there is no text apart from the text of the poems, you're allowed to make up the flesh yourself, and I think that's what gives it the well-roundedness and why people keep coming back again and again, because each one of us who's in the show will come up with different crazy stuff to play with, and that's going to come through, I think, on some level to an audience. Even if they don't know exactly what story I happen to be telling, they're picking up on the fact that it's different from what the guy before me did.
Yeah. I've actually had that argument recently about the end of Act 1 with somebody who was like, I was like, it should end with the ball when you're coming out at us. And someone's like, no, it has to happen for this. But I do like, I want to ask you about that, about the different story you can tell every night. Because how much does your cast talk about that? Like, how much do you have conversations with each other saying, tonight we are brother, sister, tonight we are lovers, like, or is it just kind of inferred every night?
I think some casts maybe do that. I don't think we ever did, or if we did, I wasn't party to those conversations. I'm often not with other people because I'm always changing my makeup and doing something backstage. So I miss out on quite a lot of that stuff. But I think if we talked about it in fun, in the kind of joking way that we are now. So we're aware that there are all these things, and we were going, no, that's not right. That's completely wrong. They would never believe that, But it's not actually. Well, tonight we're going to be playing this. I don't think so. Maybe there's a little bit of that, and maybe with some casts. But I think we took on those kind of things just as a bit of fun to amuse ourselves with, rather than to sort of put into the show. But I've got my own. I've genuinely got some very, very crazy, wild stories about how I make my show work. You said,
let's hear them. Let's hear it. I'm ready.
You said that I play sort of 3 characters. I think I only play 2. That's my main difference. Okay. So my ensemble cat in Act 1, his name officially, and it's in his wigs, is Asparagus.
Yep.
So Asparagus is obviously young Gus, because his name is really Asparagus, but that's such a fuss to pronounce. So I suddenly was thinking to myself while we were in rehearsals, how can this possibly be? Because Cats is the story of the events that take place over one night.
One night, yeah.
The Jellicle Ball. It happens every year, but we're telling the story of one night. So therefore, how can I be young in Act 1 and really, really old and about to die in the beginning of Act 2, but then I still have some ensemble duties to perform at the rest of Act 2, and how could I do those if I was still doddery and old enough to be about to die? So I came up with this, and it wasn't about feeding into Cat's canon or lore. It was, how can I, as an actor, make this work without breaking my brain, or without having to say, oh, we'll just do it, wear the costumes and get on stage? Because I'm not a method actor, but I do like to have some kind of structure to my thought processes. And so for me, I came up with the idea that, obviously, with the name of this podcast, Gus would be the right cat to die, and I think that was probably your first thoughts. So therefore, what's happening is Gus's story from start to finish. It's all about Gus. And therefore, Gus has lived a very, very long time, and he has experienced many, many Jellicle Balls at many different stages in his life. So either I was toying with the idea of time being a very fluid aspect of what's going on here, so that this is one night, but it's also all Jellicle Ball nights, all flowing and morphing into each other. So at times he's the young version, at times he's the really old version, at times he's somewhere in between, and they're all true, but they could, like a sliding doors kind of thing, they could go off at any direction for any of the versions that he has lived through and experienced. So that's the kind of literal version. But then I was thinking, well, because Gus is really old and he's really imaginative and he's really wistful, because those are two of his three words, that maybe it's just his memories that are all blurring and blending into each other, and he's not really sure which moment he's in at any one time, but any of the moments that he's remembering and experiencing are the ones which are then being acted out on stage as you go along. And that's genuinely helped me through the navigation of one experience of the show, because I had to, I think I can't do Mr. Mistopheles choreography if I'm really, really old and doddery and still can barely walk. So, and also, once Gus has left the stage as Gus and comes back after Skimbleshangle, after McCavity, he's shed the coat. So he's still got the old face and the old hair and the old beard, but he's in the younger body. So for me, that's him at a kind of medium age, but that's after we've seen him as an old age. So it's not even in chronological order. Does that all make some kind of sense?
It does. It does a lot. Yeah. And I've, so it's interesting because on Broadway, when I first saw it, it's not Asparagus in the playbill. It's Peter.
Right.
So the Gus plays Peter, and that's an entirely different name with no relation to Gus. And it's again fascinating to me about this story is like you crafted this whole thing to whether it adds to the lore or not. Like it really does, because people will hear this and now be like, is that how his journey goes? That's how a lot of the lore started. Is just a lot of the lore is just somebody saw it because two performers are friends and they're not, characters are inherently not supposed to be friends, and they are. But with Peter, it's different because it does feel like a totally separate character. And with Peter, I always joke that which would fit your narrative is that he's Saint Peter, and he has the ability to tell the Christmas past story, which would be telling it through different lenses of periods of time.
Right.
Does Bustopher Jones fit in there at all, or is that truly a separate character? Okay,
no,
so
for me, that's a very separate character. They're completely not. And even though I think in the program I'm billed as Asparagus, Bustopher Jones, and Rumpus Cat. It doesn't even mention Gus. I think
doesn't say Gus.
The program. No, I don't. Let me. Do you know what? Let me. I had one of the programs here. Let me.
Yeah, let's see.
Out and because I always forget where it's billed as what. Oh, yeah, it says Bustopher Jones, Asparagus, Rumpus Cat. So in whatever crazy order you want, Gus doesn't even get a mention.
Gus doesn't even exist.
Except, of course, he is Asparagus. But Rumpus Cat, for me, is not a separate character. Rumpus Cat is Gus stepping back into his memory.
Into his
so he's very much still in the... I think an audience would pick up on the fact that he's very much still Gus tending to be. So that's,
definitely.
So that to me definitely is the same character. Bustopher is, I'm an actor who gets to play two cats. One of them has the narrative journey throughout the show, and one is a little cameo.
Okay. What's happening with Gus during Bustopher? Have you thought about that?
Well, as Asparagus, it's... Well, I can tell you physically, he's just doing a wig and makeup change and putting on a fat suit and getting a big, heavy 20 kilogram.
No, but like when Bustopher's singing, like when Bustopher's song is happening, what's Gus's life? Is he just chilling and mad that he didn't get this particular part?
Well, it could be all sorts of different things at that point, because again, it doesn't have to be in the chronology of where we are in the show. It could be at any point in Gus's life. So maybe he's not there because he's really, really old, and maybe he's just asleep somewhere and he's just sleeping through it. He's probably just in the pipe because he spends a lot of time in the pipe anyway. It's
your break. It's your only break.
Well, my interval in the show as actor Nathan is not the interval. My interval is Skimbleshanks. That's when I've come off stage after finishing Gus and I'm not doing a makeup change, all I have to do is take off the coat. But all the way through the actual interval of the show, I'm getting into the Gus makeup and wigs, and I like to do my own wigs myself because I like to do it on my own schedule and not have to worry about sort of messing anyone else up if I'm working at a different speed that night. So I would just always be up in my dressing room while the ball is going on and all the way through the interval. And if I was lucky, I would finish at beginners. If not, they'd be waiting for me a little bit to get my moustache. I was like, you can't start. I'm at the beginning of this act and I'm not there yet. I'll do my best.
That's awesome. What other lore can you add? Like you definitely feel like you've got some hot takes with characters and everything. Like, what other lore do you want to add?
I don't know. I think it's interesting you were talking about different friends and that adding to it just because actors gravitate towards people they like and do things like that. I had such a wonderful on and off stage relationship with Daisy Boyles, who plays Jenny Lorum in our show, and obviously she's Gus's carer character, and she starts the song off and she encourages him to tell his story when he's refusing, but we just loved working with each other. We'd never met each other before. We met in rehearsals, and I remember that she came up and she introduced herself to me, and she's got this wonderful infectious smile, and I knew enough. I didn't really know the names of all the cats at that point, like you. I was like, I don't know what a car bucketee is. But I knew enough to know that Jenny Lorum and Gus would be working closely together. And I remember having the thought, thinking, I hope we're going to be friends. And we really, really were. We had such a wonderful relationship. We always spent time together off stage. We had this little moment during the end of Skimble Shanks. I would always be in a specific seat, and Daisy would come and find me, and she would always sit on the same side of me. And if the seat was on the other side of me, we would switch places so that we could sit in the right sides of each other, and we would just put the world to rights and have a little 5-minute chat where the rest of the show was just happening all around us, and it was just the two of us. So I think that friendship really did help shape what we did on stage and cemented the two of us, and we had quite a lot of time together after Gus, sort of up to and during Mistopheles as well, where we spent a lot of time sort of interacting and bouncing off each other there. So things like that I think are really, really special part of it, because those things are not necessarily choreographed. If you're not the featured moment in the show, and your only job is to watch and feed into what's happening, so that you're not detracting from it. You're siphoning the audience's attention to what's going on. But within that, you do get to put a lot of your own input in, and that's great fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's I think it's kind of the beauty of it. There's some you inherently working closely with, and others where you kind of still find your way because at one point or another you're probably crawling on top of each other. Like it's just, you're so close. You have to become so close as a cast. And then with touring, you're changing cities and you don't know as many people, and you really do get you become a family. It's you become a Jellicle family. Yeah, absolutely. And the phrase is once a Jellicle, always a Jellicle. And I there are some shows where that is true. I don't know always Jellicle, but when you're part of a show's family, sometimes it never leaves you. I've been lucky enough to do a few of those shows, the Rocky Horror Show being one of them. I think if you've been in the Rocky Horror Show, it's always part of you. And I think that's partly to do with the fan bases of both shows. They're both very, very intense and passionate about their love for their chosen shows. And maybe that's part of it. But certainly with Cats on tour, I haven't toured for many years, and I was nervous about it. We were away from home for a long time, and I didn't know how I was going to feel about that, and I found it quite challenging to begin with. I was loving the show, and I mean it's a big role for me, and I was a bit anxious about doing a good job and wanting to make sure that I kept myself in good physical and vocal health to be able to maintain the choices I was making in the show every night. And so all of that was kind of tricky to nail down at the beginning. But then Cats, it's a monolith, and it just keeps going, and it just
I think going to Cats, my advice for anyone going into Cats, if I may be so bold from my vantage point of a 51-year-old veteran of the show, I would say always remember the show is bigger than you are. And sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's a bad thing, but it's always true.
Yeah, it's very true, especially with all the, there's a lot of regional productions happening and college productions happening and all this stuff. And I think it's one of those things that you can get a little lost in the everything going on.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, it's like, Cats is going to keep, it is now and forever. It's going to keep going. There's going to be a different interpretation, and that's a fun thing to have your stamp on this moment of this production in time, but knowing that there'll be another one, and there'll 100%. Be another one, and there'll be another one.
I felt so strongly going into this because we worked so closely with Chrissy, who obviously worked so closely with Jilly initially, and because Cats has got such a continuous lineage, it felt very much like we were being handed the precious baton for this stage of the relay race of the life of Cats, to look after it until we pass it on to the next team of people who will be taking on the roles within the show. And it was so thrilling to be part of something which harkened back so clearly to the original interpretation of the original creative team who put the show together. We're all given, I mentioned them earlier, we're all given our 3 words, which I'm sure people have spoken about on this podcast before. And those came from Trevor Nunn, and they're brilliant. If ever you feel lost, go back to your 3 words. They will tell you who you need to be and what you need to be doing in the show. For Gus, it's frail, wistful, and imaginative. And I think those 3 words together, they sum him up so beautifully. Bustopher, of course, he's excess. He has more than 3 words because one of his 3 words is 3 words in itself. He has aristocratic, bombastic, and joie de vivre. So he gets even more words than 3, which is perfect for a cat that is all about excess. But again, if you worry about what you're doing, or if you want to mix things up, you can say, which of my words am I going to lean into tonight? Mm-hmm. And that can take you in a slightly different direction from your sort of default setting with the character. I used to do that sometimes, particularly with Bustopher. I'm going to be more aristocratic this evening, or I'm going to be more playful this evening for the joie de vivre. And you can add different elements to the character while still staying within a very specific framework. And that's a joy, because you've always got those parameters to fall back on.
Yeah. I'm assuming the 3 words for Asparagus were the same, right?
Yeah, it's just Gus.
A youthful version of it.
I never really thought about the 3 words there. So he was, I guess I was always playing the cat that would become frail, imaginative.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for more of The Wrong Cat Died. What are some memorable moments from your time doing the show? Either things you'll never forget that happened in your life, or on stage, or just in general?
Well, there was a big one, and it's the elephant in the room if I don't mention it. My mother died while we were on tour, and I don't think anyone can ever be ready to lose a mum. It is one of the hardest things to go through at all, and I'm really grateful she had what I would call a good death. She wasn't seriously ill with something like cancer or dementia or something sort of long and protracted. She had issues with her lungs, but and she got an infection that became pneumonia, and she quickly deteriorated and passed away. So it wasn't too drawn out, and it wasn't too painful for her or for those people around her to see her in a bad state. But my mum was always she was my biggest cheerleader. I think mums tend to be that. If they're good mums, they're going to be your biggest cheerleader. And my mum was certainly that. And she was so proud of everything that I did professionally. And she was not able to get to see Cats. She because we were out of the country and she wasn't able to fly. She when we knew that she was no longer responding to the treatment that they were giving her in hospital, and it was now the waiting game, my sister and I arranged for her to be brought out of the hospital and put back into a bed in her own home where she wanted to be. And I said, well, if we can't bring her to see Cats, maybe I can get Cats to her. So I spoke to Ben on our sound department, and I said, "Is there?" I know it's a bit cheeky to ask, but I said, "Is there a sound desk recording of my parts of the show that I could play to my mum and explain the situation?" And he said, "There isn't." He said, "But I'll record one for you tonight." And actually, what he recorded was video of the Bustopher sequence and the whole of Gus, right from the beginning of it through the Rumpus Scat and through to the reprise at the end where he walks off stage. And he sent it to me that night. This was the Friday night. He sent it to me about midnight Germany time. We were in Munich at the time. And I forwarded it on to my sister. And I said, if over the next few days there's a moment where it feels appropriate, I'd love it if you could play this for Mum, because I know she'd like to hear it. She may not really be aware of what it is, but I'd love to know that she got a chance to hear it. And she said, I absolutely will do that. Well, that's it. That very night, she was taking the first shift. It was just her and my mum in the small hours of the morning. And she noticed that my mum's breathing had changed. And she was like, oh, it's now. And I haven't played her the videos. And knowing that she had promised me that she would, she panicked and downloaded them onto her mobile phone. And she held the phone to my mum's ear. So my sister could see the screen, but my mum couldn't. When she heard my voice, she sort of stretched out her ear towards the phone. Sam says she visibly relaxed, and she knew it was me. She knew exactly what it was. And she listened to the whole thing. And my sister told me, and these were the words she said, I know you won't believe me, she said, but I promise you this is how it happened. As you sang the last phrase at the end of Gus's reprise, and as you walked into the wing on that last arpeggio, she took her last breath. So, I mean, I feel that in the way that matters most of all, the three of us were together, and the rest is just geography.
Yeah. A powerful story, and also moment too of like, you're doing something you love, with your biggest cheerleader in that moment, and also getting to share it. I mean, it shows too the level of family that you have, that everyone was like, of course we'll record it. Like, there's no question. I'll do it right now.
Exactly.
Which shows you just how the cast and crew and everyone together go through,
and everyone was wonderful
together. Yeah,
everyone was wonderful. So this was the early hours of Saturday morning in Munich, and I went on and I performed 2 shows that day, and I think some people might think that was a little crazy, but I was like, what else am I going to do? I'm in Munich on my own. Everyone else I know in Munich is doing 2 shows of Cats today. Yeah. I wouldn't have anyone to be with me if I didn't do the shows, but also my mum would have hated thinking that she had been the cause of disrupting the thing that she was most proud of me for. So it was my tribute to her and my self-preservation mechanism in a way. Yeah.
There's before that happened, and you know that she's sick, and is it something that you bring into the show at all? Because your character does like kind of align to having like a reminiscing feel in Gus, or is it very much this is my job, I'm going to go out there and do it really well either way, and I don't need to bring personal life into it? Like, do you separate the two, or does it naturally creep in?
I think you endeavor to separate the two, but it does naturally blend in a little bit. I like with my audition process, the Cats for me started with a death, and then there was a very significant death partway through, and Cats do have 9 lives, and I was like, please do not make it 9 times in 9 months. That would not have been good.
Please no. Yes.
But knowing that my sister had said what she said about that final moment, that was tough, and every time afterwards when I walked off stage at the end, because I as I said, I have such a connection with Gus anyway that I always feel the I guess the romance and the nostalgia and the pathos in that moment. And sometimes it gets an applause from an audience, and sometimes it doesn't, and it's all okay, because they're either really, really listening and buying into it, or they've really appreciated it in a different way. And so, but for me, afterwards, every time I walked off, it was hard, particularly that first day. It was knowing that was the moment that she chose to let go. That was
right. Yeah, I can't imagine.
And that came back on our last night as well, when I was already emotional from leaving the show because I loved the show and I didn't want to leave the show and wasn't ready to stop, knowing that I wouldn't get a chance to do that moment for my mum again, if you like. That was also pretty tough. And of course, everyone else is on stage, and I walk off into the wings, and I'm the only person not on stage.
You're by yourself,
apart from Grisabella at that point. And I just walked into the wings and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed for lots of different reasons. Because I'm a gentle old soul, and I'm a soppy old git, really, and I can't help myself.
Well, let's do some fun rapid fire.
Yeah.
Then.
Okay. Go.
So, if you could go on for one night, any cat, whether you could dance it, sing it, male, female, if you just immediately had the ability, who do you want to go on as?
Oh, God, I should have thought about this because this is really obvious. I'd love to be one of the twins, I think. I'd love to have that connection with another human and making sure that you're always in sync with each other and having somebody there. That'd be great fun. I can't really tap, but I would also love to play Gumby Cat.
Oh, I asked this knowing I can't do any of it. So, who are your favorite and least favorite cats from a character perspective? So who would bug you and who would you love to hang out with?
Oh, I think Monkey Strap might bug me a little bit, and that is absolutely no shade on either of our Monkey Straps on this tour, Russell and Sam, who are both fantastic and lovely, lovely people. I think he's just a little bit fond of himself and a bit fond of his own publicity, maybe.
Yeah.
And obviously Gus has been around for so much longer, and it's like, who is this upstart who thinks he's all that? But who would I really like to spend time with? I would say, because I did really enjoy spending time with, is Jemima.
Okay.
Because she's got that lovely kittenish energy, and she's so innocent and wide-eyed. She's great.
Favorite song in the show?
I mean, I do love Gus the Theatre. That's from a selfish perspective, but I think Skimbleshanks is a banger.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a great song to run to. If you're a runner, throw Skimbleshanks on and you'll have a fast mile.
Even for the introduction, are you running in 13/8?
Yeah. I always ask one fun one, and I always try to bring it to something from the episode. And you mentioned that you and your partner got married on TV.
Yes.
So if you could have one of the cats officiate that wedding, who would you have officiate the wedding?
I think I would go with Jenny Laura.
Okay.
I think she would just do such a great job because she's so caring, she's practical, she'd get it right, she would do it with love, she would take care of everybody along the way, she'd have her clipboard ready and everything would be taken care of. I think she would be fantastic, and she would be warm, and she would be compassionate and empathetic. I think she'd be a great choice.
I love it. All right, so most important question. I'm hopeful you're going to vote my way. But I've argued to the death that I don't think Grisabelle's the right Jellicle choice. So and I'm asking this as you, Nathan, who's your Jellicle choice and why?
It's 100% Gus, and that's not even me being selfish. It's 100% Gus. Maybe we see him walk off to his own death at the end of this. Maybe he's got another Jellicle Ball in him next year, and maybe it should be his time. But it was definitely his time.
I think with your... like the way you interpreted the show as like you're seeing all the moments together means it has to be his time,
right?
Because you can't incorporate all of them. You can't have all of his balls before that you would have. You can't have all of those stories being told if he does not become the Jellicle choice at the end.
I agree. It'd be so all of the balls have to be his very first one and his very last one all rolled into one. That has to be true.
I like this theory. That's a good lore to add to it. I don't think I've heard that theory ever, and I like the idea of that you're getting all of them over however many years he was alive in one production in one particular evening, and that's why you're getting all the different parts of it.
I would love to think that became part of Cat's lore, knowing that it came from an actor's neurosis and trying to make sense of a crazy show.
I'm convinced the more I learn the lore, I've actually been able to prove some of the lore wrong or right or where it came from over the course of the show. And again, like a lot of it goes back to, there's the one that I found early on was from the revival in New York. And it was just literally a moment that happened between two friends that someone asked him about at the stage door. And then that became the lore because they started playing it that way based on that. And it was literally just two friends having fun one night.
Yeah.
And like, that's a lot of the lore.
Well, and there are so many friendships in our company, so many strong bonds, not just in the performing company, but in the touring company as a whole. And we had so many wonderful people in that. We were a touring company of 60 people, and we were together for a year. So that's a long time, and you get to know each other really, really well. The good and the bad, and it's dysfunctional sometimes, like any family is. But there's really, Cats is, as I said before, it's like unlike any other show. It's the hardest I've ever had to work physically on stage. It's the hardest I've probably ever had to work emotionally on stage. It's challenging, it's difficult, but what a wild and wonderful adventure we had.
Yeah. The show you never were going to be in.
Yeah. And I desperately hope I get a chance to do it again one day. I don't think I'm done.
Yeah, you've got more Jellicle lives with you. Well,
I hope so.
This has been so fun. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your stories.
Thanks for having me.
Giving some Bustopher defense, really bringing and I love the theory. I want to now think about what other cats could have that same. Who else are we seeing all of their stories at once? Is there anybody else like that? Maybe McCavities, like we can get a little bit full craziness of him.
I think it probably makes more sense for the older ones, so the ones who have a bit more depth. So maybe a Skimble Shanks as well. Because obviously we see him in the beginning of the show costume wise without his waistcoat, so is how much of his younger self is being brought in there, and then the obviously the number where we learn all about him, but then he has his post number life as well, the same way Gus does. So I think there's some parallels there, perhaps.
Yeah,
maybe that's not for me to say. Not for me to say. Get a Skimble Shanks to tell you that. But.
I was gonna say we just had Gavin, so we could should ask him. Could have asked him at the time, but
I was supposed to see him for lunch today, in fact, but we didn't. Just other reasons.
But well, again, thank you for coming on. This was amazing to have you on, and hopefully, when you get cats again, we'll revisit some of these things.
I would love that on all levels. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and thanks everyone else for listening to this episode of The Wrong Cat Died, a podcast that breaks down the cast feed. To follow along, you could subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast. Follow us on social media at The Wrong Cat Died, or check our website, thewrongcatdied.com.